we're going to do her right arm, her right humerus, and we're going to do the AP first, okay? So what we need to do is make sure that her humerus, her shoulder, and her elbow are against the board if they can be. If we need to, we can kind of rotate her towards the affected side to help that shoulder get parallel with the IR. So I'm going to rotate her, maybe not quite so much, just a little bit. There you go, okay? And we still want our humerus centered on the IR. So if you guys can see this vertical line here on the Bucky, she's a little off center. So I'm actually going to scoot her away from me a little bit. And then what we have her do is kind of slightly abduct her arm away from her body. And we're going to have her externally rotate her hand and her lower arm. So she's going to supinate, that supination movement, okay, until her epicondyles are parallel with the IR. Okay, so there we go for her. Okay. Now where do we center?
Midpoint of humerus.
So midpoint of the humerus, all right? Now I'm going to teach you guys this way, and we're going to pull the CR over and line up and see if it works, okay? What I like to do, if you notice where the crosshairs are, we're all the way up here near her shoulder. So we're going to drop it down a little bit so that we're a little more mid-humerus. We'll throw a right marker on there just so we don't forget. We're going to put it on that lateral side, okay? The CR is going to that 40-inch SID. Make sure it's in detent. And we had that 14 by 17 lengthwise.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we're going to line up our tube and Bucky. Let's see how we did. Are we centered mid-humerus for her?
No.
What do we need to do? You guys may need to stand up. You can come up. Okay. I think we need to scoot her my way a little bit. There we go. So now we're centered on her mid-humerus. Okay, we're about halfway between her elbow and her shoulder. Now, something to keep in mind here is that we have to include both joint spaces that are attached to that long bone, that humerus. So we have to include the shoulder and we have to include the elbow. So we can collimate on Athena here, side to side, because we don't need all of her chest here and we don't need all of this extra exposure here on the IR. So we're going to collimate side to side. And then for her, we can actually collimate a little bit top to bottom, because if you notice the shoulder shadow, she's got a little bit of light above there, and she's got light below her elbow here. So we can collimate a little bit top to bottom. Okay? So, where's my sheet? It's not in here. Okay. All right, so, let's use this. Okay, so we have her epicondyles parallel to the IR. Her shoulder is included, her elbow joint is included, and we've rotated her just a little bit towards that affected side so that her shoulder and her elbow are both touching the IR. We've made sure that we've got a 40-inch SID with a 14 by 17 lengthwise, and we are going to shield her. Okay, and what are her breathing instructions?
Hold still.
Hold still. Okay, so let's say we take that. Okay, now what we can do here, and while you're recording this, I'm going to show this alternative. So let's say we can't fit Athena's entire shoulder and elbow joint with the IR and everything set up the way that it is right now. What we can do, and what you may see at clinical, is them turn the collimator box. Okay, so that puts the long axis of your IR running with the long axis, or aligning with the long axis of her humerus. Okay, as long as you remember to line up your tube and Bucky in this position, you can turn your collimator box. But as we just saw, want to turn it back, you lose your collimation. So make sure that once you do that, you come back here and you recollimate. And move your marker to make sure that it's still on that lateral side and included in your image. Okay? And then we would shield her. Same breathing instructions. This is the same exam, just 2 different ways to do it. Okay? What's demonstrated in profile here? It's actually the greater tubercle of that humerus. We'll learn that in lecture later. Okay? I know this is kind of hard to have this lab before lecture. Okay, so let's talk about the lateral, medial, lateral projection. So that was the AP. Now we're going to do the lateral. So our patient is going to be in the same position. Okay? PA back against the board, or AP, I'm sorry. AP back against the board. We can rotate her a little bit towards the affected side to get the shoulder to touch the IR. We're still going to use a 14 by 17 lengthwise, still using a 40-inch SID, and we are still shielding. Okay, so we need her in the lateral position, right? So what we're going to do with that, or for that, is we're actually going to have her turn her hand in. So she's going to pronate, and we're going to have her turn her hand until her epicondyles on the distal humerus are perpendicular to the IR. Okay, so sometimes simply pronating the hand works and gets your patient in that position. Sometimes they need to go a little more. So simply pronating the hand may not get your patient into the position you need them to. So make sure that you're double checking those epicondyles and rotating until they're perpendicular. Maybe bend just a little bit. There you go. Okay, you may need to go a little bit more. I know it's hard. Okay, so now I'm going to rotate you though because you came up off the board, and that's okay. Okay, so shoulder, I'm going to rotate her a little bit because her shoulder, when she pronated, came off the board a little bit. That's okay, but we compensate and correct that by rotating her a little. Just relax your shoulder down a little bit if you can. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move your hair if you don't mind. Okay. All right, so where do we center?
Midpoint of humerus.
Still the mid-humerus. So we're going to make sure that we didn't move. We're going to scoot her over just a tiny bit. There you go. And we do need to come up just a little bit here. So I'm going to move my Bucky and my CR. There you go. So now we're centered midway between the elbow and the shoulder. Okay. Marker is still on the lateral side. Okay. And we can collimate again. So we've got a lot of light here on her chest and a lot of light over on that lateral side. So we're going to collimate. Okay. Don't forget we have to include that shoulder and we have to include the elbow joint. Okay. So if we do that, that's good. Okay. We've got elbow down low, and I'm actually going to turn you a little bit more.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It's kind
It's
of
okay.
hard. Every time I do it, my shoulder comes up a little.
It's okay. Relax. Turn your head away from me. That'll help. Okay. Good. Good. I'm just going to squeeze a tiny, tiny bit maybe. Okay. All right. So we have a little bit of an issue here. It's not an issue, bad, good, or other, but we need to make sure we're including the shoulder. And in this position, we're kind of clipping it, right? We don't want to open our collimation because we have a lot of light here and on her chest already. What could we do?
You could.
Turn the collimator box. So what we're going to do is turn the collimator box so that this line is going and aligned with the long axis of your humerus. We do need to open it a little bit top to bottom here because now we're clipping the elbow and the shoulder still. Okay, so we'll open that up. Okay, but can we collimate side to side now?
Yeah. Yes.
Quite a bit, right? Yeah. So we'll collimate. Move our marker back in there on that lateral side still. And we're going to shield her. And the last thing that we need to do, especially for this one, is have them turn their head away from you, because if you can notice when she turns her head in, her shoulder kind of comes up, her chin kind of starts to superimpose a little bit. But if we have her turn away, then that eliminates all of that, and her shoulder does actually relax a little bit. So turn their face away. What are her breathing instructions?
Hold still.
Hold still. Okay. And what is in profile here, do you think? If the AP was the greater tubercle, what do you think is in the lesser? Yeah,
The
good.
lesser.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, pause. Or stop.